My ex forced me to quit my job, abused me and our kids, then refused to pay child support. So when he tried to take custody away from me, I filed to split his 401k. He fought it for 4 years. When I finally got the disbursement, it was 4 times what he'd won back from me. Now his fiancée blames me for why he won't marry her. This is a story about financial abuse, legal warfare, and the most satisfying retirement account split you'll ever hear about. When our first child was born, my ex-husband forced me to quit my job. Not asked, forced. He wanted me home with the baby, and he made it clear that working wasn't an option for me anymore. I became completely financially dependent on him. Everything ran through his accounts. Every purchase I made had to be approved. Every dollar I spent was monitored. By the time our second child turned 2 years old, I discovered he was having an affair. By that point, he'd become extremely verbally and emotionally abusive. Sometimes physically abusive too. But I stayed because I had no income, no savings, no way to support myself and 2 small children. Then he crossed a line I couldn't ignore. He abused our oldest child. That's when I put him out. That was in 2012. As soon as I kicked him out, the real financial abuse began. I couldn't afford daycare to work. I had no family support nearby. I was completely stuck. I asked him to give me money to take care of the kids, his kids, who he'd insisted I stay home to raise. You know what he said? "The courts haven't ordered me to give you a dime." He refused to pay anything. Not for food, not for rent, not for our children's basic needs. Nothing. Then it got worse. He lied to the bank and had my accounts frozen. The little money I did have access to, gone. Locked away because he claimed I was misusing his money. When I finally filed for default in the divorce, meaning he wasn't responding to the legal paperwork, he assaulted me. Physically attacked me for daring to move forward with the divorce. 6 months after I kicked him out, a judge finally ordered him to pay child and spousal support. The amount? $2,562 per month. It should have been a relief. Finally, some financial stability to take care of our kids. But he refused to pay it. He just didn't pay. Month after month, nothing. He knew it would take time for the court system to catch up with him. He knew I was struggling, and he didn't care. He only started paying when wage garnishment finally kicked in, when they started taking it directly from his paycheck. By that point, he was already $6,000 behind in support. I used that $6,000 in back support to get court permission to move away with the kids. I needed to get distance from him, and the arrears gave me the legal standing to do it. About a year after the divorce was finalized, I remarried. I'd met someone who treated me and my children with respect and love. Someone who wanted to build a life together, not control and abuse me. Before I remarried, I checked the court documents carefully. There was a specific box that said spousal support would stop upon remarriage if that box was checked. The box wasn't checked. So according to the court order, my spousal support should continue even after remarriage. It was legally valid. Now, I also had the right to file for a portion of his retirement account. We'd been married during the years he'd contributed to his 401k, which meant legally I was entitled to a share of those contributions. But instead of filing for the retirement split, I made what I thought was a fair decision. I'd just take that final year of spousal support, about $12,000, and leave his retirement account alone. Spousal support was only ordered for 2 years total anyway. I figured taking that last year and not pursuing the retirement account was a reasonable trade. I'd get my $12,000. He'd keep his full 401k. Everyone moves on. That was my plan. Take the spousal support. Don't file for retirement. Move forward with my new life. In 2017, 5 years after we'd separated, my ex filed for sole custody of the kids. out of nowhere. No warning. Just suddenly filed paperwork trying to take my children away from me. That's when he discovered I'd remarried. And that's when he realized he'd been paying spousal support during the first year of my new marriage. He was furious, absolutely enraged that his money had gone to me while I was married to someone else, even though the court order explicitly allowed it. I told him very clearly. I took that $12,000 in spousal support instead of filing for my share of his retirement account. If he wanted to let me keep that money, we could call it even, and I wouldn't file for the 401k split. He refused. He demanded that I repay every penny of that spousal support. Fine. The judge ordered me to repay it. But they also increased his child support obligation and deducted the repayment from that increased amount. The math worked out so that I ended up getting an extra $20 per month, and he essentially repaid himself through increased child support. He dropped his bid for sole custody in exchange for getting 2 extra weeks with the kids during summer. And then I did exactly what I'd warned him I would do. I filed to split his 401k retirement account. My ex refused to cooperate with the retirement account split. He fought it at every turn, dragged out every process, ignored deadlines, didn't respond to requests for information. It was so bad that the court sanctioned him. He was ordered to pay me $600 per month for an entire year, on top of child support, as a penalty for his obstruction. They also charged him with contempt of court for refusing to comply with orders. This went on for 4 years. 4 years of legal back and forth, motions, hearings, sanctions, contempt charges. All because he wouldn't just cooperate with the split that he'd forced me to file for. In January 2021, my ex proposed to his girlfriend. In May 2021, 4 years after I'd first filed for the split, I finally received the disbursement from his 401k. I won't say the exact amount, but I will tell you this. It was approximately 4 times the amount of that spousal support overpayment he'd fought so hard to get back. 4 times. I'd thought the retirement account share would be around $12,000, roughly equal to that year of spousal support. That's why I'd originally considered it a fair trade. $12,000 in spousal support, or $12,000 from retirement. Pick one. If the amount had actually been around $12,000, he would have come out even by making me repay the spousal support. He'd have gotten his $12,000 back and kept his full retirement. But it wasn't $12,000. It was about $48,000. I had no idea it would be that much. The account had grown significantly during the years we were fighting over it. Compound interest, market gains, continued contributions, it had all added up. If he had just let me keep that year of spousal support like I'd originally offered, it would have cost him $12,000, and I never would have filed for the retirement split. Instead, by forcing me to repay the spousal support and fighting the retirement split for 4 years, he ended up losing $48,000 from his 401k, all because he tried to take my kids from me and wouldn't let me keep $12,000 that I was legally entitled to anyway. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Recently, my ex's fiancée sent me an email. She told me it was my fault that he wouldn't marry her. According to her, I cleaned out his retirement account, and now he's too worried about his finances to get married. She said I shouldn't have stolen his money. I took a deep breath and responded very calmly and factually. I explained that I gave him a clear choice. Let me keep that year of spousal support, or take it back and I would file for his retirement account. He chose option 2. I told her that if he really wanted to marry her, but was worried about protecting his remaining assets, they could get a prenuptial agreement. Lots of couples do it. It's a perfectly reasonable solution. She responded that she shouldn't have to sign a prenup because I robbed him. Let me be very clear about something. I didn't rob anyone. Every dollar I received was court-ordered. Every filing I made was legally valid. Every split was calculated by financial experts and approved by a judge. I never asked to be financially dependent on him. He forced me to quit my job. He forced me to be a stay-at-home mother. He forced me into a position where I had no income and no savings. He clearly indicated that he wanted a court order before he'd take care of his own children. So I got him a court order. I tried to be fair. I tried to take the lesser amount by keeping the spousal support and not filing for retirement. I gave him that option in writing. He refused. He chose the path that cost him 4 times as much. Looking back at the timeline, there's a very clear pattern. My ex refused to pay child support until the court ordered it. Then he refused to pay the court-ordered support until wage garnishment forced him to. Then he racked up $6,000 in arrears. When he discovered I'd remarried and received spousal support, he tried to punish me for it, even though it was completely legal. When I warned him that forcing repayment would mean I'd file for his retirement, he didn't believe me or didn't care. When I filed for the retirement split, he fought it for 4 years, racking up sanctions and contempt charges. At every single step, he chose the option that cost him more money, more stress, and more legal trouble. All because he couldn't stand the idea of me having financial independence. All because he wanted control, even after the divorce. Let's do the math on what his choices actually cost him. If he'd just paid child support voluntarily from the beginning, he wouldn't have racked up $6,000 in arrears that I used to move away. If he'd let me keep the $12,000 in spousal support, he would have kept his entire 401k, saving him roughly $48,000. The sanctions for not cooperating cost him $600 per month for a year. That's $7,200. Legal fees from fighting everything for years? Probably tens of thousands. Total cost of his stubbornness and need for control? Easily over $70,000, plus legal fees, plus the stress of multiple contempt charges. What did he gain from all of this? 2 extra weeks with the kids during summer vacation. That's it. That's what it cost him $70,000 plus to get. I actually feel a little bad for the fiancée. She's been with him since at least 2017, got engaged in 2021, and he still won't marry her. She thinks it's because I cleaned out his retirement. But here's what she doesn't understand. First, I didn't clean it out. I got my legally entitled share of marital assets. There's still plenty left in his account. Second, if he really wanted to marry her, but was worried about money, a prenup would solve that problem instantly. The fact that he won't marry her even with that option available suggests the retirement account isn't actually the issue. Third, she's blaming the wrong person. I'm not the one refusing to marry her. He is. His financial situation is a result of his own choices, not my actions. But she's been fed his version of events, the version where I'm a greedy ex-wife who stole his money, not the version where he abused me and our kids, forced me into financial dependence, refused to support his children, and then fought every legal obligation for years. She doesn't know, or doesn't want to know, that every dollar I received was court-ordered after years of him paying nothing. What did I learn from this entire nightmare? First, financial abuse is real and devastating. Being forced to quit your job and become financially dependent on an abuser is a trap. It keeps you stuck even when you desperately want to leave. Second, document everything. Every refusal to pay, every threat, every instance of abuse. I kept records of everything, and that documentation made all the difference in court. Third, know your rights. I researched family law. I understood what I was entitled to, and I didn't let him bully me out of it. Fourth, sometimes being fair or nice to an abusive ex doesn't work. I tried to be reasonable by offering to keep the spousal support and not file for retirement. He threw it back in my face. Sometimes you have to pursue everything you're legally entitled to because trying to compromise with an abuser just gives them more opportunities to hurt you. Fifth, the legal system moves slowly, but it does eventually work. It took 4 years to get that retirement disbursement, but I got it. The sanctions kicked in. The contempt charges stuck. Justice was slow, but it happened. And finally, living well really is the best revenge. I'm happily remarried to someone who respects me. My kids are safe and thriving. I have financial stability. Meanwhile, my ex is still fighting battles he created, still dealing with the consequences of his own choices, and apparently still too paranoid to get married again. Would I have preferred to never go through any of this? Absolutely. I would have preferred a marriage without abuse, a partner who contributed fairly, and a divorce where both parties acted like adults. But that's not what happened. Instead, I had to fight for every dollar, every right, every bit of stability for my children. So when people ask if I feel bad about taking his retirement money, my answer is simple. No. That money was compensation for years I spent out of the workforce raising his children. It was compensation for being forced into financial dependence. It was my legal right as a spouse who contributed to the marriage. I gave him a chance to settle it for less. He refused. He chose to fight. And he lost. And honestly, the $48,000 from his 401k didn't just represent money. It represented freedom. It represented security for my kids. It represented a buffer against ever being financially vulnerable again. Was it revenge? Maybe a little. But mostly, it was justice. So what do you think? Was I wrong to pursue the full retirement split after he forced me to repay spousal support? Should I have just let it go? Or did he get exactly what he deserved? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story of legal revenge and financial justice, hit that subscribe button for more tales of ex-spouses getting exactly what's coming to them. Thanks for watching, and remember, when someone forces you to take them to court, make sure you take everything you're entitled to. I'll see you in the next one.